Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today, we are speaking with a coach from Fitbliss Fitness. She is a wife and a girl mom to an 18-month-old and a 13-year-old, and also a dog mom. She loves true crime podcasts, which I sent her something similar to that just yesterday in hopes we might, get to talk about it over the next coming weeks. But she loves the outdoors and adventuring, as well as advocating and connecting with women. She lives by the quote that if you don't like something, you can change it. And if you can't change it, then change your attitude. She entered the bodybuilding world after leaving an abusive marriage and finding the courage to choose herself. She started researching and educating herself on nutrition, strength training, and bodybuilding, and found her calling in life. Fitness took her from feeling powerless and defeated to empowered and strong. This athlete first competing in March 2015 and then competed in 3 regional shows and 2 national shows, winning her pro card at USA's in 2018 before going on to make her pro debut in 2019 and compete 2 more times as a pro. But now her goal is to step on the stage again, postpartum. So welcome to the show, CARRIE Hennessy. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm just so excited and honored to be here. How are you?
I am good too. Thank you for asking. I'm so happy that you are here, and we have so much to talk about, but I always kick off the episode by asking if there's anything you do, think about, or a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage.
Yes. So actually, affirmations are really important to me. It's kind of been passed down from my grandmother. My grandma was like just the most amazing woman, just like hype woman, the best hype woman. And so she passed away just a couple of years ago. So I had started competing, but hadn't turned pro when she passed away. And she would just always tell me how amazing I was and that I could do anything I wanted, and just the ultimate hype woman. So I actually right before I turned pro, so 2018, I vividly heard her say to me as I was about to step on stage, like, you got this, you already did it, this is you, this is your time. So I just always think of my grandma, like I always think of my grandma saying, like, you've got this, you already did it, and like, be proud. And so I do that. Of course, I do like the normal, like posing and listening to some music and just kind of getting in the zone, but I always go back to her, and think of her every time right before.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that she supported you as well, and she wanted to see you feel positive about yourself, because you hear stories sometimes about upbringings where women are not necessarily uplifted by the other women in their life, unfortunately. So that actually also speaks to your character and your desire to both empower but also connect with other women.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm really blessed. One thing I'm really big on is family. And I'm really blessed that like all of the women in my that I'm surrounded with are just powerhouse, positive. And my grandma, she could only see 5% out of one eye at the very end of her life. And she would just say, you have the best physique. Your physique is the best physique there. Like she just was just so positive, and that's something she always did. And that was passed on, my mom, and my parents, and then now to me as well. And now my kids. So
Yes, that is awesome. I think having the ability to continue that legacy is really amazing. And also to people who end up changing the narrative in their household to be positive that way is so, so good. And then there's also the side of it where sometimes I think when you're raised with so much love and care and uplifting, you maybe will miss when others aren't that way. And you could see the best in people. And that can lead you to then maybe missing red flags. And I could be totally off base, but why don't we just jump right into a pivotal moment in your career, which was leaving your abusive marriage?
Girl, first of all, you are spot on. You know, I joke, we joke about my dad. We call him a negative ninja because if there's any negativity, he's just like he's diving, like getting away. Like they're just so positive. And I just was surrounded with that through my childhood. And in my relationships, all my relationships, really nice guys. And first thing I'll say is, when you're in your party mode, don't get married. Don't get married when you're, figuring yourself out and in that area. But yeah, I that totally was, met someone, life of the party, super fun. We would party and have fun together. And then I realized, that's not what I wanted forever. And he, said that he also wanted to change. And so was really good at putting on that front for a while. And then got married and had a daughter. And, I take marriage very seriously and those relationships. And so I wanted to, red flags were definitely there. And so, we're in the relationship for the marriage for a couple of years, and a lot of infidelity, a lot of verbal, emotional abuse, and then, eventually escalated to physical. And I wanted to be able to tell my daughter that I did try everything I could to keep our family unit, because I had that as a child. I had my mom and my dad, and, I had such a safe space, and I wanted to make sure I could try that. So I finally, though, just realized I was actually in Target in the dressing room trying on bathing suits. I have the picture that I had taken, and I just, I've always been athletic and very outgoing and confident, and that just took all of that away from me. And just really walking on eggshells, just very alone, very depressed. And so I finally just was in the Target bathroom. I mean, in the dressing room, I looked at myself. I was like, that's it. Like, this is it. We're done. I am going to follow my passions. I'm going to become the healthiest I've ever been. I'm going to give my daughter the life that she deserves. I'm going to give myself the love I deserve. And so the next day, I told him that I would be leaving. I called my parents, and that's one thing I do want to just touch on, is that there's a reason why most women leave 7 times before they actually leave. And there's so much emotional that goes into it, but then at the same time, people don't necessarily have finances. That's another form of abuse, is financial. And I was lucky that I called my parents. My dad flew down. We were in California at the time. He flew down, rented a U-Haul, moved all my stuff, paid for me and my daughter to fly back to be with them, gave me their car. And so I had a lot of support, and I was really blessed and lucky to have that. But that was really, and it's funny. So before that, that was the first time I saw a bodybuilding show. So I watched the Olympia. It was a 2013.
Oh,
Ashley K won. And I remember sitting there with everything going on and just being like, you know what? That would be really cool to do one day. Like, I'd love to be on stage. I'd love to do that one day. And that's kind of what kickstarted it.
wow, 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 wow. Well, there's so much I want to say to all of that because I feel like we can dive into some of those things. But one thing I noticed was when you said the word family unit, you were playing with your wedding ring. And
Right.
I wonder if when you were saying that, I was like, I wonder if now, you feel like you actually were able to provide that unit for your daughter that you were previously trying to uphold in the wrong environment. Now you have it with someone obviously who's more fitting.
Yeah, yeah. My husband now is just Oh, he's amazing. And that's one thing too. Like I just want to say to women, like there is hope, there is love after. And I didn't close my heart. I knew that I was gonna have someone, I knew I would find someone who loved me. And I knew that I'd find someone deserving. And he is just, yeah, he's just amazing. He is so loving and so caring. And it's funny. So when we got together and then we moved in together, we knew we would become a family. He asked me what I wanted for my birthday one year, and I started crying. And I just said, you know, you gave it to me. The thing I want most is stability for my daughter, and you gave that to me. And you know, there's nothing else I could want. Of course, I'm gonna cry thinking about it, but
Of
but
course.
yeah, it you know, you have a lot of mom guilt for you know, my dad told me one of the most important decisions you're ever going to make is who you decide to have children with. And I felt a lot of guilt for a very long time. I mean, I still do, you know, that I didn't choose a better partner. And she now has to deal with that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of guilt, but I do feel very blessed and happy now that she does have such a great stepdad.
There's so much emotion in that. And the vulnerability you're sharing is greatly appreciated, first and foremost, especially because I think even not going through an abusive relationship, but maybe at end of any relationship or some that are very tough or could potentially go down that path, it does make you want to close your heart, and it kind of makes you question, like, what am I really worthy of and deserving of? Why did this happen? So the fact that you were able to see, no, I am deserving of love and I will find that. But how did you heal from that so that so that you were actually able to reopen your heart and learn to trust and be open and honor yourself when exploring other relationships?
Yeah, I think, you know, at first there was a lot of, you know, at first when I got out, because it was spread over so many years that everything happened, I think I processed a lot of it like as we went. So by the time it was over, I was like, I am just done. Like, just get me
Mhm.
out of this. I'm so happy to be out. And I think it took me a while. Like, I didn't process. Well, I feel like that's kind of part of sometimes trauma processing trauma, you need some time, right? You might not deal with it right away, but it doesn't go away. And so, you know, at first I was just like, look, I'm a single mom now. Like, I'm trying to figure out who I am. I have to provide for my daughter. I have to be this strong, like, for her. So I really didn't deal with any of it. And it's interesting because the next person I dated, I know, luckily I noticed very soon, but I was like, okay, I'm repeating this pattern. Like, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
super, you know, I kind of was repeating the same person. And so I realized I had to stop that. And so I just did internal work. I started focusing on me. So it was a lot of just figuring out what is it that I want to be? What kind of a mother do I want to be? What kind of a woman do I want to be? And what kind of a relationship do I want in the future? And then, you know, later on, I've also done EDMR therapy, and talking about it. Talking about it has been it's hard, but it has been really great to just open up because it is such an isolating thing. And I was so embarrassed for so long about it. And so that has been really therapeutic as well.
Yeah, the more we talk about traumatic situations, the more we're actually processing it, which is great. And I've noticed sometimes when we do that, we better identify some of those maybe red flags or behaviors even within ourselves that we didn't know about before. And talking about it also gives other people an ability to see that they might be in a situation that could indicate problems, whether now or in the future. And being able to discuss it, although it's difficult, it's amazing that you've been able to garner a lot of purpose from that too, and find that it's beneficial for you and you did a lot of work on it. EMDR is no joke. And the fact that you got to the point of even being able to pursue that tells me, I mean, I have a counseling background, so I understand you had to do a lot of work in order to get to that point. And I think that in itself is really great. And you said that there was embarrassment. And I think that's another very common thing people experience when leaving these situations, because maybe they're not in the position they once were financially or where they expected to be. They're having to rely on other people. They're like, oh, I didn't trust my judgment. I should have seen this. I should have seen that. And now I'm in this position, and it can feel very shameful. And then you bring into that prior belief systems, like I'm supposed to pick the best person for my future child, and now I didn't do that for my child currently, and they have to deal with that. So when you come out of that, you face not just the actual trauma of it, but then all the emotional experiences within yourself. You do almost put yourself in a position where you have to work on yourself to attract the right partner. Otherwise, that cycle does generally repeat. And I think when you consider what you want for a future relationship, at least it can be difficult in some ways, right? Because you had in your mind, like, this is how I was treated. This is what it was. Is this even possible? So, how did you learn to really trust your instinct and your gut, and also that you could uphold those standards for yourself to not have to tolerate that ever again?
Yeah, I think, I first just acknowledging that I made a mistake and I'm human and like it happens. It happens. And then no, I had great examples, and it's interesting because I have always known what I want, and I've always been very confident in like I deserve some, like I give all of myself and I deserve someone who's going to give the same. And my parents, for example, I've never seen my dad yell at my mom, literally ever. They have such a healthy and loving relationship. And so I knew that that's what I wanted. And I had to, forgive myself for making the choices I did that led to where I was, and just know that that wasn't me. Like it happened. It was a situation, and it happened and it was terrible, but I did try everything I could to have it be healthy. And I I guess I just, I know I deserve it. So
Yeah.
even going through all of it, I knew that I deserved better and I knew that I wanted that. And it just, it took me being able to be okay to say it's over and it's done. That was, I think that was maybe the difficult part, was just being able to, just lead to end it. Um, that was, just acknowledging that it wasn't going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. What were some of those behaviors or things that you realized were not going to be able to be worked through, or you weren't going to sustain any longer?
Yeah, just being like not being treated nice, being yelled at, being sweared at, having things thrown, me being, just lots of excuses on that he was going to step things up, provide. I was working, 60 hours a week, doing all the things, I was doing everything. And I was like, I want an equal partner, and infidelity and, not having that partner, really feeling like it was another child who, at the drop of a dime would just freak out. And I just said to myself too, one day I was like, if he changed absolutely everything, would I want to spend the rest of my life with him if my daughter wasn't there? And the answer was just a clear no. And
Mm.
so then I knew that, it was time. So many empty promises. I just was like, I have one life to live, and I don't want to waste it anymore.
Powerful stuff right there. There's a lot going through my head, and I'm grateful you're sharing all of that. I think it takes, well, I know it takes courage to walk away from something that you know doesn't serve you anymore and that isn't healthy for you, especially when you've had an example too, like you said, from your parents of what was healthy. And then you can kind of spot like this isn't exactly aligned with my vision of that. And also, I really like that you said you're human. So you had to acknowledge first that you make mistakes. And I've had to learn that if I make a mistake, it's not that choice that defines me, but it's what if I continue to repeat it more so
Hmm.
instead of learning from it. And I can be more forgiving and compassionate with myself when I realize, like, wait, I made a choice, I learned from it, and I realize that's not me, or that's not for me, or that's not how I want to live. And if I hadn't made that choice, maybe I wouldn't have learned that about myself. So I can have some grace with myself through those experiences. And then you had said that through this experience, you gained a lot of your power back. So, and that was really the final straw was when you realized your power was feeling almost completely depleted and your confidence, walking on eggshells, all of those things. So, after going through that, how did that influence the way you viewed yourself and your health, and then prioritizing being an example and so on and so forth, as far as the improvement goes in your life?
Yeah, I just took it as for so long I was just walking on eggshells and really wasn't progressing or moving forward. I was serving tables. I was like Penny. I worked at the Cheesecake Factory for a long time as a server. And there just wasn't, I was just trying to survive. And so then once I was back with my family in this surrounding of love and the thought was just I get to start my life all fresh, like I get to decide what I want to do and pursue my passions. And I wanted to be healthy, I wanted to feel strong, and I just wanted to really just figure out what made me feel good and be an example to my daughter. She was young. Luckily, she was young when we split. And so, of course, that's going to affect her, but she luckily doesn't remember or know a lot of the things that happened. And I just wanted to show her that you can do whatever you want, and it just takes hard work and focus. And I love what you just said about when things you make decisions and things happen. And that's one thing that I'm really big on is that I don't necessarily think that all things happen for a reason. But I think that the way you get to decide what you learn from everything that happens, whether it's good or whether it's bad, there's just things I'm like, there's no way that that's meant to happen. Like, just really unfortunate things, but you get to decide what you do with that and how you learn. And one of my good friends told me, everybody, it's easy for you to see the growth that you had from a tough experience after, but it's a whole other level to be able to, during and in those difficult times, to be able to see the lessons that are going to be learned from it. And that was something that just really resonated with me, and something, I just believe that, bad things are going to happen. We're going to make bad choices. We're going to do these things. And then it's up to you to decide if you let that, you know, take over and be your story, or if you get to change and, learn and then grow from it.
Hmm. Right. So even if it wasn't necessarily meant to happen for any particular reason, you have the opportunity to choose what you do with it. And that speaks to your motto, really, about changing your attitude. And so you were working as a server and then you fell in love with fitness and you wanted to pursue that passion. When did that passion turn into you becoming a fitness coach?
So Yeah, so I actually, you probably remember back in the day, bodybuilding.com, Jamie Eason, she had that 12-week trainer.
Of course. Yes, I
So
remember.
so that's how I started it. I did the 12-week trainer, and I don't know if you've ever interviewed, do you know Amy Updike?
No, I haven't interviewed
So
her.
she's awesome. It would be a great person to interview, but she's here in Utah, and I started following her on social media, and she was competing in a bodybuilding competition. She's also a mom. She was working full time as a nurse, and so I just really related to her. So then that's when I got into competing, and then through that, through doing it on my own, and then also competing, I just was like, "Ugh, this is amazing. I love this. Like, I feel so, I feel so strong and so passionate. And I want to share this with other women. Like, I want other women, no matter if you're a mom, whatever you do, I want you to feel strong and feel, sexy and confident. And so that's really how I started to go into that. But I didn't actually start coaching for another couple of years.
You just got the seed planted that you wanted to pass that to other women.
Yes, I knew I'm like, this is the space for me. Like, I, you know, I love pushing myself as an athlete. I love the bodybuilding community, fitness. So I knew that this was where I belonged. I just didn't know if I'd be a good coach yet or how even to approach it.
Definitely. That's understandable. It was still fresh, but it was something you felt passionate about. And I think generally when we're looking for empowerment of ourselves, we will turn to something that allows us to feel that way. You happened to turn to fitness, and you had said, you watched the Olympia in 2013. Was it on your radar before that? How did you even find out, oh, let me put on the Olympia? Like, how did this unfold really that your interest would actually gravitate to fitness?
I don't even, honestly, I don't even remember. I think that I had started already following Amy on social media. And so I think that's how I kind of first saw it. I did when I was living in California right around that time. I had started going to a gym, just like a little, mostly doing cardio and all that. But then I honestly don't remember. I can clearly remember sitting at my computer watching the Olympia, but I have no idea how I even saw it, or I'm not even sure. But that was where that bug and that seed was planted.
Wow. Okay, well, that's so intriguing because I think a lot of us competitors can remember the first time we got exposure to it or even considered stepping on stage and how that journey evolved. And sometimes I think as we get further into the journey, we can easily lose sight of or forget what brought us to it. And I'm curious what types of things from the beginning empowered you that you still think about and find empowering as a competitor even now?
Well, okay, so I actually did think of, as you were saying that, I thought of, so the first time I was exposed to a bodybuilder. So I'm from a small town in Maine,
Okay.
and I had a boyfriend, and his friend, he would go to the gym and work out with his friend, and John Gasper is his name, but he was a bodybuilder. He was one of the only bodybuilders in Maine. So that was actually the first time, and I specifically remember went into the gym. It was called Champions at the time, and he had this Tupperware of like 7 boiled chicken breasts. And I was like, that looks disgusting. But he was just like the huge dude, such a nice guy. And so that's actually when I first had heard about bodybuilding.
That's
Um, so tell me, ask me your question one more time. I apologize.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. So, the question was, is there anything from the beginning of your fitness journey that was empowering for you then that you still find to be empowering to this day?
Yeah. I think seeing women, for example, Angelica coming back to the stage after
Yes.
having her 2 children, I think, seeing that was, Amy inspired me as a mom, having this goal. And, now seeing Angelica have this goal coming back, I think just having that goal, and as a mom, especially being okay with having passions and things outside of just being a mother. I mean, mother, that's number one, always. But it's nice for me to be able to have other things and passions and goals that I work towards. The other thing I will say is the community. That was actually the most surprising thing at the beginning of bodybuilding is the friendships. I mean, some of my best friends are all people who I've met in the sport. And that was something that was just such an awesome thing that I didn't expect. And, continuing that now, it also inspires me seeing other women, push themselves and, really work on themselves inner and the physical, has always been really inspiring.
I absolutely agree with that. I think there's something about even still, like years and years down the line, just speaking with or learning from or seeing other women committing to themselves and their health and this sport or even outside of the sport is really inspiring. And you said that a lot of the moms really inspired you. Now, you started competing as a single mom. How did you manage that, and how does it look different now coming back and making that return?
Yeah. So, I was fortunate that I had the support of my parents, and I lived with them at the time. But then so my best friend, Kat, coincidentally just happened. We were both working at FitCon and we were working a booth, and I met her. And it was like one of those things where she was like, "Oh, I compete." And I was like, "Oh, me too." And then she said, "Oh, I have a 5-year-old daughter." I was like, "Me too." She's like, "I'm getting divorced." I was like, "Me too." She's like, "Did we just become best friends?" And so we would help each other. So, we basically, me and my daughter would stay at her house because her daughter and my daughter became best friends. And she would, put toothpaste on my toothbrush when she left for work and would leave me a note and say, "I hope you have a great day," and like some pre-workout. And I would prep food and give it to her. And we really were such a support system for each other. And it really did make such a difference. But it's difficult, you have to, that was one good thing about serving is that it was very flexible. So I would work 3 or 4 doubles in a row so that I could be home with her during the week. And so I was really lucky to have that support from my parents and then also from my friends. And then now I would say, it is more difficult having a 1.5-year-old daughter. Because now, before when I was prepping, it was just my daughter. So I had one person who was number one, right? And then I could do prep and me stuff. Well, now I have both daughters and my husband. And so I have to fit all of my stuff in when it doesn't affect everybody else.
Hmm.
And so it definitely has been a bit more challenging just with the amount of time that I have. So, just scheduling around everyone else. And then also, if she's sick, she doesn't go to school, I have to then figure out, okay, well, how am I going to get in my training or my cardio? And so I'm a planner. I like planning. And so I kind of enjoy it. But it has become more difficult having a smaller child.
Sounds like this phase has really encouraged maybe a more flexible approach.
Yes, I
Yeah.
will. Yes, it has, which my husband will laugh at because he's totally like, just go with the flow, fun. And, I plan everything out. And so he would just be laughing at you saying that because he'd be like, yeah, it is.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, now I plan things out, but they come first. So if it doesn't work out, then I'm going to have to, do cardio at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, while they're sleeping. And so in a way it's maybe more flexible, but then also like I have to plan even more. So
Yeah.
like meals or things like that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's also really interesting too, because you can't predict, like, well, I had an old boss back in the day that called them toilet bowl moments. Like, if the toilet's clogged at work, the day can't go on until that toilet's unclogged. It was a gym, of course. So, um, ever since then, I always think about, like, okay, there's gonna be clogged toilet moments throughout our life and during the day that we can't predict, but we do have to address them. And I saw your story recently, or maybe it wasn't I was doing my homework and it could have been a highlight, so forgive me, but your daughter was sick and you were doing a quick 30-minute workout from home. And I was thinking, like, that is actually a really great example for women, even who do not have children, to see that prep can make, like, you can make prep work under circumstances that are unexpected, and it doesn't have to look like this person on social media or this
Mm-hmm.
Olympian. It can look how it needs to look for your life and for your circumstances.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have to, comparing yourself to others, it's not fair, right? Like I can't, what I have to do in a day isn't the same as someone who, this is their full time, this is all they do.
Right.
And it wouldn't, all that would do is just make me feel crappy. So instead, I just have to do the best with what I have. Just like I tell all my clients or other people, life isn't linear. Your progress isn't going to be, you're not going to always be able to have, there's never like a perfect time to do anything. And so you have to just try to plan and do what you can with it and just roll with the punch, like just roll with it, find humor in it, laugh about it. It's not the end of the world.
You
That's the other
say
thing to just
that,
kind
and
of
I
say.
just like imagine a version of you that's like learning to laugh at the lack of control, like, haha, this is great, I'm fine. But I know it's like very much easier said than done when you do like to plan. And
Hmm.
and that's why this sport is great for those of us who are very conscientious as well as neurotic. But it's just interesting how you're able to transform that according to your needs. And what I really appreciate is how you said it would be unfair to compare yourself to somebody else. And I think that's true even when someone has a similar life demand
Hmm.
as us, because the way they handle it, or maybe their beliefs or their past experiences, are gonna still be very different from your own. So being able to step back and say, what is actually most helpful for me right now that's gonna put me on the trajectory to my goals is, I think, really the key. Now, you also said that you first watched the Olympia, and wouldn't it be cool if you did that one day? Is that your trajectory? Is that your goal?
Oh man, I mean, I would love, my goal right now. I also am I like to dream and I like to have an action plan to that. I'm also very realistic and I'm not someone, I would 100% love to step on the Olympia stage. I'd also love to step on the Masters Olympia stage. I'll be 39 this year. So I mean, that would be the end all be all. But right now, my focus is I want to first crack top 10, then I want to crack top five. And so I'm kind of going in goals that way. But I mean, that would be, I mean, of course, yes, absolutely.
That's amazing. I love that you have your goals, though, like certain things you want to accomplish. I think I learned personally through my journey in competing that it's important to have the lofty goals, yes, but also having some of those milestones that you might be seeking to hit along the way is not a bad thing. It doesn't make you any less of a competitor or any less of someone who believes in themselves to have milestones or other goals to hit. So, I just think that's an important point to drive home. Yes, dream big, go for the gold, do everything that you want to do for yourself and can do, but it's okay if that also looks like setting mini goals and stepping stones along the way. Now, you did go on a very successful run of regional shows, but something that stood out to me in your journey was that you went from last place at your first national show to then earning your pro card. So what had to change between, I believe it was North Americans, if I remember correctly, and
Hmm.
USA's to achieve that goal? Have you ever been told that you can't heal your relationship with food unless you stop competing? Or do you feel like a lost cause because every time you've tried to heal your relationship with food, you're always met with the same challenges, judgment, shame, and guilt? But you're ready to get to that root of your relationship with food and really understand your habits and behaviors and make lasting changes that are going to drive you forward in your competition goals as well as your life. And of course, if you don't want to stop competing in this sport that you love, but you also don't want to continue down the rabbit hole that is setting you back in your life, emotions, and potential for success on stage, I want you to know that you can get through this. And no, you do not have to stop competing in order to do so. You truly deserve to have successful preps, productive improvement seasons, and peace of mind year round. Because when your head is full of thoughts of food, eating, or guilt, you cannot invest that energy into the goals you truly care about, which is a big reason why I launched the 5-week food relationship program and why it has been my most highly demanded program to help competitors like yourself make peace with food so they can pursue the sport they love for the long run without having to worry about sacrificing their mental health. If you want to learn more about this program and hear from others who have done it, then visit www.celestial.fit/foodfreedom. Scroll through that page, get some information, and if you're inspired and you are ready to take action on this, go ahead and apply to work with me, and I will be getting back to you within 24 to 48 hours to go over your application and discuss your concerns specifically to determine if and how I can support you. Again, that is at www.celestial.fit/foodfreedom.
Yeah, so, I think my first year, and you probably can relate, your first year, you don't really know what exactly, like, kind of like a deer in headlights. I'm like, yeah, this is fun. Like, I did the show. I was like, oh, I definitely want to do this more. And then I kept going, and I was burnt out by the North Americans. And I also was balancing being a newly single mom, figuring that out, navigating that. And I really did have to take a step back and just realize, you know, I need to be a little bit more balanced with not being, I think it might be part of, and many people might relate to this too, is that, you know, the sport of bodybuilding can be selfish if you allow it to be. I mean, you have to focus on yourself a little bit, but I kind of realized that post divorce, I was thinking about me a lot, and I had to realize that, competing is awesome and I love it, but right now it's not the best thing for me to be doing. I also struggled after North Americans with binge eating, and relationship with food and body. And, I did not reverse diet. I should have talked to my coach more about reverse dieting. He told me what reverse dieting was. I was like, oh, yeah, sure, sure, sure. But didn't follow something. And so kind of had to deal with that as well. And I just was like, you know what? I'm not going to compete again until I'm balanced. Like, where, because one huge thing I always say to clients is, you know, you have to have your boxes all checked before you start competing. It's going to be a much more positive experience if you have your ducks in a row than if you're competing when you don't have the finances, when, relationships, when, all these things are not in a great place. And so that was kind of the biggest change, is just I was in a much, much better place, and I was happy and I was thriving and I was in this great relationship. And I was like, you know what? I'm ready to focus on me again. And I'm ready to, see what I really can do, and really put the pedal to the metal and do the thing.
Wow, but there's so much there that I want to dive deeper to. So, first of all, going from that show to then USA's and winning your pro card, You said that you were binge eating after North Americans. What happened between that and USA's that helped you to, yeah, get to that point where you could earn your pro card and then step away from competing for a bit?
Yeah, so 2015 North Americans, and then I started competing again 2018 in April,
Okay.
April. April.
Okay. I'm
So the
following.
biggest thing I did was I took time away. First of all, I stopped dieting. I was like, okay, I'm not doing this yo-yo up and down. Like I just
Hallelujah.
Yeah, so I stopped dieting. I still worked out. I ate healthy, but I really honored my body. If I was hungry, I ate. If I wasn't hungry, I didn't. I didn't track macros for a while, but I prioritized protein, sleep, recovery, family time, all these things. And I just felt really good. I felt good about myself. And so I was like, I'm going to wait until I'm ready, to compete. And then I had been seeing one of my friends was competing. She was doing really well. And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready. Like, I want to do this. So just in a much better headspace and well, body and headspace.
That's what it sounds like. And I love that for your journey, because I think when you go through that and you really take the time to step back and work on it, you're equipping yourself with more insight personally, emotionally, mentally, physically to then attack another prep from a healthier space. And I went
Mm-hmm.
through a very similar journey myself. And I'm grateful for that time that I took away because
Mm-hmm.
it brought me back to, maybe not even brought me back because she didn't exist, but it brought out a version of me that could compete and have a healthy relationship with food and my body and the goal. And part of that also was having reasons to live this lifestyle outside of the physique and
Mm-hmm.
competing. And I think that's so important to know what those reasons might be for yourself. And it sounds like for you, you continued to live a very healthy lifestyle and prioritized what mattered. And that, I'm assuming, gave you even more reason to continue those habits for, yeah, okay, I'll step on stage because I'm already doing what needs to be done, not because to step on stage, I need to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think too, it was part of, when I started competing, I was getting out and finding my new, like, I hadn't healed completely, right?
Mm.
So it was like, oh, I found this passion and I love competing and I want to do it, but I'm not completely healed. I'm not in the right space to continue doing it. Um, and so that definitely allowed me to, focus on me more, and get to a place where, I love eating healthy. Like I love salads, I love veggies, I love all this stuff, and that's part of who I am, whether I'm competing or not. And so, but then I really like to push myself, and I think we're all like, yeah, a little, maybe it's from the neurotic or whatever, but I like it. I like pushing myself hard, and so then that kind of passion and that burning to want to do that again came back.
This is why I say it's not competing to blame. It's our
Right.
intentions, it's our
Yes.
approach, it's how
Mm-hmm.
we view things, it's how we utilize maybe some of those less than ideal mindsets and we transform them to good. And that is why I'm all about build more than just a body. And I help competitors with this because I see so often people walk away from the sport because they're blaming the sport. But really often it's not. It's your perception, it's your intentions, it's how you're viewing the lifestyle itself.
Mm-hmm.
And you just said something so important, which is you would do it anyways. You live this life anyways. And I cannot tell you how many times I speak with competitors and they are worried about letting go even just a little bit of control. And I'm like, what are the odds that you'll actually make decisions that are completely opposite of living this lifestyle? And when they get realistic with themselves, they realize I would eat healthy regardless. I would
Mm-hmm.
continue to move my body regardless. Sure, you might not look like a competitor who's 5 weeks out from a show, probably not consistently year round if you're trying to get to nationals at least. But you will feel empowered knowing that you shouldn't need competing in order to feel fulfilled about executing on these habits and these daily habits, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it just, if the validation you're seeking is just stepping on stage, then there's internal work to do. It's not, you're only on, that's kind of one thing I talk about too, is just like, you're only on stage for what? 5 minutes, like 10 minutes, like you're on stage for a very small amount of time. So if that's your only thing that you're excited about, this process is going to suck and it's not going to be positive. You have to really focus on enjoying the process of it, of each day, and pushing yourself and, getting excited about PRs in the gym and things outside of just the show day, because that's the thing that you have the least control over. You don't know who's going to show up. You don't know any of that. And so if you're putting all your eggs in that basket, you're not going to probably have longevity in it, and you're not going to enjoy it either.
Yes. Everything you just said. Rewind, press play again. That was great. I have nothing to add because I would say exactly that. And I think that probably benefits you too as a coach to be able to provide that perspective to clients. And I'm assuming recognize when maybe they're doing it for less than ideal reasons. I wouldn't say wrong, because sometimes we kind of need to go through that at times, but then I would say you can identify those less than ideal reasons and at least guide someone to consider other benefits, or maybe release the pressure from the timeline of a show as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think of a client right now where, off the top of my head, well, first of all, if a client comes to me in their check-in and let's say they're saying like, I want us to hit a fat loss phase, or I want to do a show, my first response is always, what place is this coming from? Are you not feeling good about your body right now? Are you on your cycle? Is there something going on in your life? And usually it is because of that. They're like, okay, well, yeah, like I'm about to start my cycle, or, I ate off plan. So I just say, when you're not emotional and we're not in this headspace, we can talk about it. And with this one client, she had competed in the past. She had a tough reverse and struggled with some binge eating. And I actually gave her your free resource, which she used,
Oh,
which
that's
was
awesome.
amazing. But we then reversed calories and we were working for about a year. And then she recently just said, hey, I want to compete. And so I asked her those questions, what's the reason why? And then in some of her more check-ins, I just noticed a little bit more negative headspace and around body image. And so I said, you know what I think we should do instead? I said, I think it'd be a much better thing. Why don't we just do like a badass photo shoot? Why don't we do like a 16-week prep, but it be for you to have an awesome photo shoot, feel powerful, strong, sexy. And I don't think competing is a healthy thing for you. And those are tough conversations to have, but she was like, yeah, you're 100% right. Like, definitely. And so now she's about to start that fat loss phase for that. But yeah, I think it does give me, I'm able to kind of pick up when people, are struggling, or ask them where it's coming from, because I've also been there myself and I've dealt with that.
And what's amazing is by doing that and transitioning her focus to something else, you might actually be equipping her with the version of herself needed to pursue a healthier prep and reverse diet experience if she wanted to compete in the future. And or it might equip her to be like, I was doing this for a reason that wasn't right for me, and it's okay for me to step back. So having those conversations, like you said, is so important. And the ability to broach that too, I think demonstrates a lot of your willingness to really help someone. Because if someone says something that's a bit of an alarm in our head, and we don't broach it, we're really doing them a disservice. So I think one of the greatest services a coach can provide is broaching the difficult conversations and then actually being willing to have them, not just open the door, but walk through that journey with them and equip them with something much more empowering.
Yeah, I mean, I love competing and I love the sport. And, you've talked about this a lot. It can be a very positive thing, but it is not for everybody. It just isn't. And, that's kind of a conversation I'll have too, even if we're in the middle of prep. Just say, I like to check in, like, how are you feeling? What's going on? Like, not only like biofeedback, but, how are you feeling about this? Is this still something you want to do? You don't have to. It's okay. Like, it's I love it and it's what I'm passionate about, but it's not for everybody, and that's okay. I think that's one thing that a lot of competitors just keep competing and competing because they feel like they have to, that's part of their identity. And you know it's amazing, but it's not everything. And it's not worth that mental health part.
So true. I actually saw a post the other day from a woman who was sharing how she was going through a prep and she kept like calling and crying to her dad, like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't even know I'm putting myself through this. And I remember reading that in her caption. It was of a reel or something. And I wish I could tell you who it was. I don't know. I would cite them if I did remember. But, anyways, this was the general story that was being told. And I thought to myself, there's got to be something rooted in the identity of follow through, like finishing what you started, that isn't necessarily beneficial in this type of an environment because competing is highly demanding. And I think it's okay to step back. Even if you aren't planning to step back permanently, if you're feeling those feelings where this is really too much, and too much to the point where you don't want to continue, not too much where it's like, oh, this is exciting and I'm growing and I'm challenging myself. That's good. You want that. It's not going to be easy necessarily. But the type where you're really questioning every single day whether or not you should be doing this, that really should be a warning sign that there's some internal work that needs to be done to even determine if it could be for you in the future. But as it stands, in those situations, I do think it's better to have someone step away and reevaluate than it is to be like, just push through, see if you like it. Let's just see what happens, because they already know they aren't enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even what you said too about that girl reaching out to her family, that's another big thing that I'm big on. Reaching out to her family and complaining about it and how she's feeling. We're choosing to do this. And if we want our loved ones to be supportive, we need to not be talking about our food all the time, not be talking about our bodies all the time. And we have to present it in a way of why we want to do it, right? And so I think that when you have those conversations and you say, I want to compete because XYZ, and just explaining that to people, they're going to be more understanding. But if you're always complaining, if you're always talking about food, nobody really, not very many people care. Like, we care a lot, right? But that's not everyone else's life. When you're in prep, you're zeroed in, and everyone else in the world is not zeroed in. And so those relationships are just so important. And if you're always complaining to your loved ones, then they're going to be like, I don't think this is good for you. Like, this is not a positive thing. You should not be doing it. And so that's also one thing that's sometimes a red flag. If clients are always constantly complaining or saying they're complaining to their family, I'm like, okay, well, we need to do a little mindset check, or we also need to see if this is really the best thing for you.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. I think the way we speak about ourselves, our body, food is the narrative that others around us who we're speaking to take on. So if
Mm-hmm.
later, post show, for example, people are questioning, oh, your body looks different. Oh, you gained weight. Oh, this. You allowed that conversation to be had about your body
Mm-hmm.
when you accepted the compliments to an extreme form as you were getting leaner. And I think
Yes.
people don't consider how the conversations they're allowing in prep are going to continue post show as well. So if you don't want people commenting on your body post show. Be careful of what you allow them to comment in prep, and reiterating your point too. If you are complaining to loved ones and they love you, they will not want to see you go through something that you don't
Mm-hmm.
enjoy. So,
Yeah.
and that's not to say brush it under the rug and pretend like it's all great. I mean,
Right,
there are
right.
some people, I think, who you can have those conversations with and be like, I'm choosing this. I know I'm choosing this, but also it's a hard day and
Oh yeah.
it's
Well, and that's
okay.
why it's great to have other competitor friends, because them I can. I mean, I have a couple of my girlfriends that, like, one of them, the one that suggested that I come on the show, that wrote in the comments,
Yes.
we send each other voice memos. I'm like, today sucks, blah 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 blah. Because she understands. They
Yep.
understand it. Whereas my husband, who doesn't prep, he's like what? I don't, like, it's not
Right.
the same. Or my 13-year-old daughter, she's not worried about, that I'm eating, X amount of calories, or I have to do X amount of cardio. She's like, okay, can I go hang out with my friends? Like, can we go
Yeah,
shopping? Like, you know what I
exactly.
mean? It's not. So I do think it's important to have a support system. But the people, you just want to be careful about who you're, like, what you're complaining about to who. And so, yeah, I think that's, it's important.
And to speak further on getting around other people in the sport, whether that's I mean, I've made friends I've only met online. I've never met them in person, but I can really talk to them about these things, or we relate on this level. So, but also if you get the opportunity to go to a workshop, an event, a
Mm-hmm.
retreat, a seminar, go,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll walk into a room and you'll be like, wow. And I've heard this at every show I've been to, every seminar, every workshop. No, without fail, I've heard at least one person say it's nice to be in a room with other people who have their Tupperware in their backpack, who are looking for the nearest microwave, and who already packed, their workout clothing for later, or they have their heels. Like, it's nice, so I
Mm-hmm.
hear that every time, and I'm like, if you're craving that type of community, you can get it online. But with all the opportunities now in the industry, as things have expanded even more, get yourself out there. It's worth investing in a trip to a seminar, a trip to a retreat, a work. All of those things are worth doing.
Yeah, and that just made me think of, even with my life and how I transitioned into this, I don't, fitness is not everything. It's not. But I do think it is an entry point to what you're going to accept in relationships, in all of these things. So I've often had,
Mhm.
clients where they are like, okay, well, I really want to do this, but my friend group wants to go out and party, or my friend group isn't supportive. They make fun of me for ordering a salad or this or that. And, if you're changing your lifestyle, there are going to be some things in your life that are going to change as well. If you can be disciplined with working out, with eating food, you are going to have more boundaries in all areas of your life. So, fitness is not everything, but I do definitely believe that it spills over into what you accept and what you want, out of life and relationships and work and all those things.
Great point. It's really a personal standard you're setting and upholding for yourself every day. Another reason why realistic expectations are actually beneficial is because you can tick those boxes and build efficacy, build belief in yourself that you can uphold and actually do what you say you're going to do, and build that trust with yourself. And I like how you said it will impact things like relationships, work, friendships, because what you tolerate today will show up again tomorrow. And I've
Mm-hmm.
learned this the hard way in
Mm-hmm.
relationships, where I'm like, wow, like what I'm tolerating now, I actually couldn't tolerate it forever, nor should I. So I need to be able to set this boundary for myself, even if it means you're gonna lose something you thought you had, or what you expected, or you might be judged for it. It's so worth it, and competing is empowering in that way. And while you can find that type of empowerment in other hobbies, and it is important to, I think, have other things of interest outside of competing, it does benefit so many areas of life. And you brought up even, relationships. And that brings me to your husband. And you said he doesn't really get it. So that tells me maybe he doesn't live the same lifestyle. Although from what I saw in photos of you guys, he appears fit. I hope
No,
I'm
he
not
does. I
offending
guess he
anybody.
doesn't. So let me just say. So my husband is an introvert. So super, super smart guy. I mean, he does videography, graphic design, builds website. Like he is such a
Wow.
smart guy, but he's an introvert. So the thought of being on stage and people even looking at him, like he likes to be behind the scenes. And so that's probably more what I meant. Like he doesn't get it. Like, if he's hungry, he's like, I'm gonna eat. But no, I mean, he goes to the gym and we definitely like our hobbies align. But he just would have no desire to ever compete.
That's fair.
So and he is definitely my biggest supporter and always, before I turned pro, he knew I would turn pro. He said I would turn pro. When I wanted to coach, he's like, you're gonna coach, you're gonna, do all of these things. And so yeah, we're just kind of opposites in,
Oh,
our personalities, but it works really well. So it works well.
that's really beautiful. It's complimentary. And
Yes.
something really cool. I went when I researched for my athletes who I'm interviewing, if they have a husband or a boyfriend, I'm on that person's page. I'm reading what are they saying about her? I want another perspective. And he wrote a post where he said that you are incredibly considerate on prep and that you truly do this because you love it. So to have that type of feedback from someone else in your life speaks volumes about the way you're approaching this. But also, that leads me to wonder, what do you think helps you to maintain your family life, relationships, other interests, even when in prep?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think just thinking about what's the most important, my family unit is the most important, my relationship with my husband. This is a choice I'm making, and I'm doing it purely selfish, 100% for me, but that doesn't have to affect him and how I treat him. I want, he is so kind and so sweet to me. Why would I then be mean to him because I'm choosing to eat low calories, And I think, perspective, obviously, I've also been in a not healthy relationship where I haven't gotten that. And so I am just, I think that's something he and I have also talked about is that we just appreciate. It's not that we love each other more every day. The love is about the same, but we appreciate each other more every day. And so I think that because we've both been married and not in great relationships, we are just so grateful for what we have that I'm not going to let something like competing get in the way of that. And then same for my daughters, like my 13-year-old, sometimes she won't even know I'm competing. Like she doesn't even know I'm in prep. That's not, I don't want to be snappy with her. Like, obviously, there's moments I'm hangry. Oh, of course, I'm tired, but I don't want to look back and her be like, yeah, my mom, like, yeah, she's an IFBB pro, but like, she's always hungry and she's always like
Yeah.
mad or she's always talking about food or her body. I want us to have an awesome family. I want to have fun. I love fun. I love laughing and I want my home to be a place that's really happy and a good place. But there is balance because on the flip side, I don't necessarily say if I am struggling. So
Mhm.
that's something I definitely am working on, is being vulnerable. Same, I actually have a couple of girlfriends who I have recently started. If I'm struggling, I reach out to them and they're like, just vent, just tell me what's going on. And, so that's nice. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how, I like to, I want a happy life and I want my family to be happy and feel that love.
Yes, I really like how you said that it's not competing should not come at the sacrifice of your marriage or your family, really. And when you value that, you're able to set things aside or evaluate or always come back to center. Like if at the end of the day, every day you can be like, did competing add or take away? You're gonna probably your compass will point in the direction that you need to be going more often than not. But if you forget to look down at your compass and see, am I going the right way? You could be way over here and you got a lot of work to do to get back to where you need to be in order to be, pointing the direction you need to be going. And so when you can be conscious about it up front and throughout the process, I think you save yourself a lot of that. What we see often is athletes who then they get to the end of their prep and their marriage is falling apart, their relationships falling apart. They don't even know what's been going on in their family as much because they're consumed by these thoughts of food in their body. So it becomes unhealthy versus like really being mindful of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably the biggest difference from that first year I competed to now. I mean, I was like, that first year I competed, I was like, if it wasn't on my meal plan, I was not touching it. And I was more hangry. And my family did see that. And so that was a concern when I went back. And then they saw, I was like, well, you know what? I hear you. I hear what you're saying to me, and I understand why you feel that way. I'm going to show you that it's different. And so that's how I did it, by showing up to family events, by bringing my Tupperware or whatever it was, but being there, being engaging, not talking about my body all the time, not talking about my food all the time. And then they were really able to see that change. So yeah, I mean, that was a difference for sure. And that, I think it takes, you got to learn, go through these experiences, and you learn through it.
Yes. And I think you only learn if you take the time to reflect and be
Mm-hmm.
mindful. And if you don't take that time, you will probably end up building some sort of resentment towards the sport or to other people because you're like, why don't they see it the way I do? And you're like, oh, maybe because there actually is a problem with your process that's not conducive to other areas of your life. And that circles back to comparison and why that's very important to stray away from, because when you decide on this is the process and the approach I need to take for myself, you might actually fall into the trap of, but I'm supposed to be doing what this person's doing. So that also is, I think, why it's important to work with a coach who understands those other facets of your life and wants to work with you through that. Now, I'm really curious about your pregnancy too, because you were already living the fit life, the healthy life, and so many people worry about how pregnancy is going to affect their body, their skin. Maybe they're trying to figure out if they can even compete after they've had a baby. So, or they're adapting to some of the changes like loose skin or stretch marks. So, how did you navigate this personally, if it was something you had to navigate?
Yeah, so actually, so my husband and I, we tried to get pregnant for about 2.5 years, and we're unsuccessful. So we went and did testing. So that's kind of why I took a step away from the stage in 2019. I competed, did my pro debut, and then stepped away because we were trying to start a family. So all 2019 into 2020, we were trying to conceive, and it wasn't happening. And so we it was so difficult. It's such a, anyone who's going through any kind of infertility, it is so isolated. It's such a personal experience. And it was just really hard for me. And so then I finally just had to say, we were about to do in vitro, or we were going to first do insemination and then try in vitro if that didn't work. And I just said, I need something from you. Like, I need to take a step back because this is so consuming and I am feeling depressed and every month's a letdown. So I was like, you know what? I want to compete. I want to step back on stage, take some time, focus on me, relax. Which that was one of the most annoying things that people would say, just relax and it'll happen. But so then I competed, I did April 2021 and then July, and I got pregnant 6 months after. So Atlanta,
Wow.
yeah, so Chicago Pro, that was the time it was in Hotlanta. And
Yeah.
so that was my last pro show, and I got pregnant 6 weeks after.
Wow.
So we were so excited, but yeah, I mean, I was 6 weeks post show when I got pregnant. And so, there were definitely those thoughts of like, oh my gosh, am I just going to like gain a ton of weight? How am I going to, navigate this? And I just wanted to feel, first of all, I was very grateful to be pregnant. So I was like, I'm just going to continue what I'm doing. You know, when I feel good, I'm going to go to the gym. I had a couple of non-negotiables. I was like, I'm going to get 10,000 steps a day. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. I'm going to eat 130 grams of protein and I'm going to eat veggies. Outside of that, you know, depending on how I feel, we'll just kind of deal with it. Um, but it was still difficult. I mean, it was still difficult, obviously, you know, stage lean to, gaining
Right.
30 pounds in pregnancy.
Yeah.
Um, I did actually, I was nauseous the whole pregnancy. It was pretty miserable, but I am so glad that I committed to going to the gym those 3 days because that was when I felt like me. Like that's, that made me feel like myself. And then I definitely think it then helped with recovery after. Now, postpartum is a whole different ball game where, you're not going to the gym right away. You just had a baby, like you just went through some serious trauma. You need your body to recover. And so that was more difficult for sure, mentally, just really not feeling like myself. And then it was a lot. So I just had to be patient with myself and hit those non-negotiable, like hit those things. I knew that if I was just like, you know what, screw it, like whatever, I would have felt much worse. So just hitting those few things really helped me with, as she got older, and with, my body and, um, but yeah, it's tough. It is hard. It really is hard. Um, Once again, I have a good support system, so that did help. But even your husband or your significant other, or whoever, they're not going to understand the same like what you're going through. Those, your female hormones postpartum. So just having a good community to rely on made a really big difference.
Yeah. And I love how you said the habits were really key, like your non-negotiables, those things that you were going to do no matter what, and that supporting you and feeling like yourself. Now, coming out of, so you went from stage lean to pregnant to then coming out of pregnancy. So I imagine that's a whirlwind of changes to see your body go through. And I know that for a normal women going through it is hard enough to see their body change, let alone a competitor who literally like the last time they were getting lean was for a show. And now you're
Right.
postpartum and you're trying to take care of another human being on top of your already existing responsibilities and passions. So was there anything that you had to change mentally when you decided to commit to a prep again that maybe you weren't thinking you would have to change from your previous prep or experiences?
Yeah, I think it's probably what you said in the beginning is being more flexible,
Mm,
and not having a timeline, um, being just open to allowing my body to do its thing rather than, like even I'll even share, my goal was I have been prepping for a while. My goal was to do Wasatch Warrior, one of my favorite shows. Robin Maher is amazing,
yes.
but my body has not responded the way that I thought it would. And so I don't think I'm not going to be ready for that show. So just being more open and allowing, like, controlling what I can. I guess that's one of the things is I can control certain things. I cannot control everything. And being okay with that. Being okay that, my body might not respond the same right now. And that's okay. That I just have to, obviously communicate with my coach and then just make sure I'm doing what I can and being nice to myself, like, not beating myself up or comparing to others and where I should be right now. And just wanting to feel good. I think that was one thing postpartum I focused on is what are the things that make me feel good? And what makes me feel good is drinking water and eating food and getting in movement. And so, you know, trying to be consistent with those things and then not be so hard on myself. I think that that's
Mhm.
probably one of the
Yeah.
biggest things.
feel like not being hard on yourself is a prerequisite to finding comfort in more flexibility too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty tough on myself. I'm sure, I mean, most competitors are, you know. You have to be if you are willing to put your body and your mind through these
Yes.
things. But there comes a point where it's not healthy. And so, you know, just realigning those things and making sure that I am doing this because I love it and because I am passionate about it, not because I feel pressure like, okay, well, now you're a year and a half postpartum, you better get back on stage. Like, you're a coach, you're a pro, you need to compete. So making sure I'm not putting those outside pressures on myself. And it is coming from a place of, I love doing this and I want to do it.
Yes, it needs to come from that place of like, I genuinely am choosing to do this. And you went through such a journey too with the infertility and taking a step back to compete and then naturally falling pregnant, which is amazing and such a blessing, of course. And I'm glad you didn't have to go through anything more than what you already did. And you said that every month was a letdown. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that probably hit home for a lot of women or couples listening who are dealing with that or going through that. And I think even to go back to our one of our very first conversations and just introducing someone into your life. And I think about how you had a daughter already and now you're introducing this man and you marry him and then it's okay, we're also going to start a family. How did you navigate the decision to build your family with your eldest daughter and your family unit as a whole when I believe you had written in a post that she wasn't his biggest fan in the beginning. So how did that really progress into being the unit you are now?
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, first, one thing I was really big on is I wasn't going to introduce her to anyone until it was serious.
Mm.
So unless I could see myself marrying this person, it being like a serious thing, I didn't want to confuse her and have her be meeting different people and just be confused. And so, you know, I was very upfront from the very beginning. I'm like, look, this is a package deal. You're going to meet her when we're serious, but I just want you to know that for me to be with someone, you have got to treat her like your own daughter. Your family has to accept her as their own grandchild, which my in-laws are amazing and they do. And so that was kind of from the beginning, like, you know, it's a family unit. And I do understand if that was too much, I would have understood. I definitely would have. That's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot of pressure. And I mean, this could be a whole different podcast, but being a step parent is so incredibly hard. It is probably one of the most thankless jobs out there. Because you just don't have the same rights. You don't. And so it can be really tough. Um, and so, you know, he came into it in a really great way of just wanting to be her friend. He didn't put any pressure on being anything more than that. And for her and I, it was just us. So yeah, she was like hands off my mom, back it on up. He'd try to kiss me. She'd like put her hand up and be like, do not touch my mother. And so he just really worked on being a friend with her to her. And then it became where I was the odd man out. They were little besties.
Oh.
They did a dance at our wedding that they choreographed it together, and it was Bruno Mars, You Can Count on Me. Not a dry eye in the whole place. But so they just really built a bond that way. And I was always very honest. Like, I want more kids. I want a more family. I come from a family of six, so I love it to be loud and crazy. And, you know, I wanted that. And so I shared that with him. Um, and, and I felt like our relationship was strong enough that we were ready to bring in, you know, another child. And of course I did, you know, I worried about how, you know, Gigi would feel with having a baby. I definitely made a very conscious, and I think that this is something that has happened, that a lot of people who have been in traumatic experiences or you know had these you know bad relationships, you're very in tune to feel the room, like you're very empathetic and you pick up on things because you have to. And so I was very aware of her feelings and wanted to make sure that she felt included and part of it. I let her help pick her middle name. I let her, just be very involved. And then just make sure that we're also spending time one-on-one with her. So she still, feels like, she's not being left by the wayside because there's this new family unit. But it's something you're always doing, like in everything in life. Like it's never perfect. You do the best you can.
Wow. I'm so blown away by your ability to reflect and articulate these experiences in a way that is so consumable for us to like enter your world and understand what was going on and how you've navigated and learned from that. And I just think it's incredible to like his patience and willingness, and that reflecting also what you said you always wanted and knew you were deserving and worthy of. So you being able to trust yourself and honor what you really wanted and needed eventually led to something even probably better than you could have ever imagined.
Yeah, I mean, and we both made each other. It's funny because when we dated, at first he was like all in and I was like, I don't know, I'm newly single, I don't know if I really want to. And then I was all in and he was like, well, I don't know. I think we made each other really work for it until we were like, okay, no, this is 100%, like we know that this is right. So
Oh,
yeah, it definitely took time. It wasn't like our first date was like, oh, we were made for each other. No, it took like a year and a half. It took some time. So
I like that. Yeah, like the stakes were high too. So you both had
yes.
like highly valued what you were doing and how you were spending your time and being very honest about where you were at because the stakes were high.
Hmm.
Okay. So there was another thing I wanted to ask you about as far as coaching goes, which is how you navigate, because I had someone ask me this recently and I was like, this could be a good opportunity to actually ask it on the podcast. But do you ever face clients comparing themselves or their journey to you as a coach and where you're at? And if you do, how do you navigate that as a coach?
Oh, that's a great question. I haven't ever had someone outright say that. But I will say that that is something I am very conscious about, especially in my social media. Sometimes I'll even like put a disclaimer, like, I mean, I'm sure like there's like a lifestyle client, like let's say someone who just has never even been to the gym and wants to start going to the gym. That's going to be a different kind of coaching than a competitor. I'm going to hold a competitor to a much higher standard than I'm going to someone who is just trying to get in the gym and get strong and eat more protein. And so I do always try to say, like, this is my journey. This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm at. And so I've dealt more with like people comparing themselves to someone else. Like even actually just last night, one of my clients DM me and was like, I worked out 2 times this week. And I'm ready to say that's amazing, like congratulations, because she's had a lot of like home renovations and things happening and hasn't had enough time to focus on that. And before I was even able to say that, she was like, I mean, it's good for me. Like, I know it's not for most people. Like, it's not that great. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, don't do that. Like, we're talking about you. This is your life. This is where you're at right now. For you, being able to get these 2 workouts in is a lot. So let's freaking celebrate it. Let's get excited about that. You know, don't compare yourself to me. And, I'm a little crazy. I hold myself to this, crazy standard. It's not the same as you. And yeah, I that's something that I've never vocalized or talked about, but it is something that I do worry about. I do worry about my clients, even when I post something on social media, and I struggle with social media anyway, but I do worry about that. Absolutely.
Well, that's why I thought it was such an interesting question that she posed to me because, like, I don't work with clients as a nutrition or training perspective, but I do see clients compare themselves to their coach or even worry about expressing certain things to their coach because they're like, oh, well, for them, this is easy. For them, this is a no-brainer. They don't have to think about going to the gym. But I love how you said this. You said, why would you do that to yourself? Why did you take something that was such a beautiful win? I made it to the gym twice, and then you diminished it into, but it's not that great compared to da 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 da. And I just like how you said, that's great for you right now. Like, let's celebrate and focus on that. And I think that's probably a big theme or takeaway even from this podcast is like really celebrating where you're at and what your needs are right now and recognizing the courage to pursue the dream or the goal or the need, even if it looks different than you expected or others might expect.
Yeah, because I mean that would be the equivalent of me, where I'm right now, or even let's say me right after I had my baby, and then I'm comparing myself to Jen Dory or Maureen. Like that's not fair. Okay, so am I just trying to make myself feel like crap? Like, it's not, as much as even me now, like I'm killing it doing all this stuff. I'm not, that's not where I'm at. So like if I compared myself to these top Olympians, is like what's the reason for it? Why am I just trying to make myself feel bad? Or is that also just part of my subconscious and something that I really need to work on? And that is one thing I like to work on with clients from the very beginning is like barriers, things that like preconceived or like in your subconscious, things that maybe your parents have taught you, women around you, social media, society, what are these limiting factors? Let's heal those first, because if you heal those, the nutrition and the working out part, it's going to be easy. But if you do the nutrition and the workout part, you still feel like crap and you still have these limiting beliefs, it's because there's something going on deep inside that we need to work on. And it's an ongoing process, like I don't think you're never like 100% like, oh yeah, I'm never going to have a thought like that again. Or, you know, that's also not realistic. I think sometimes too, that's what people think is like, okay, well, I'm doing so good. Like, let's say they're doing really great. And then all of a sudden they have a bad day or they feel bad about themselves or they go off plan or whatever. And they're like, see, I'm a failure. I could never do it. Like, I knew I could never do it. Or this person was right. It's like, no, you're human. Like, you made a mistake. Like, that's going to happen. No,
Right.
no one's perfect.
No, exactly. I like to think of things as like blank out of 10. So like if 9 times out of 10 you binge on Oreos, for example, it's fair to expect on your 10th time or the next time you do it, you're going to potentially binge because there's a 90% chance, right? But that doesn't mean you can't change it to 8 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And when people go, oh, I messed up or I am a failure because I can't do this, you're like, well, look at all this other evidence we have that you've done this and that you're doing amazing and that you can have the confidence to execute. You do execute, you make things work even in difficult times. Just because this time of adversity or challenge, or I don't even like to say a moment of weakness, but let's say that was the terminology utilized, that happened, it doesn't mean that that's who you are or that confirms biases that others or limiting beliefs that others placed on you or that you learn to believe about yourself. So like you said, being able to say, well, yeah, that happened, but that doesn't define you or that doesn't mean you're anything more, anything less than just human.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'm gonna use that, the 9 out of 10. I really like that.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah, it helps. I think too, especially for people who are kind of data driven, it helps them sometimes. And I'm not saying tally your binges or anything, but
Right, right, right. No.
just like, yeah, it's like that percentage of like, wait, I actually have so much more proof that I am all these amazing things than I
Hmm.
do of this one bad thing. This one bad thing just feels really big. Now I want to get your best advice, although you've already shared so much great insight from your personal journey. So, what would be your best advice for someone who has never competed before but would like to? And then your best advice for someone who's on their road to pro?
All right. So, best advice for someone new to competing. I would say to really take inventory. Well, first, I would say really think about why you want to compete. Um, it- what is the purpose behind it? And then the other thing I would say is to make sure that your life is in line, that this is going to be a positive experience. So, relationships, finances, mental health, physical health. Focus on making sure that those are all in a good, optimal place before you then decide to compete. And then
Amazing.
someone on the road to pro, I would say believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself. You know, it will happen. It'll happen eventually. Control what you can, believe in yourself, work so damn hard, but know that like turning pro is not, you're not going to turn pro and then be like, oh, like my life is amazing now, like I've made it, now I don't have to work hard, or really just be proud of yourself for doing what you're doing, because only 1% of the world is doing it. And so believe that you can do it and put in the work.
That's amazing. I just love the theme of empowerment and really supporting yourself in this journey. So, how can people connect with you, follow your journey, and work with you as well?
Yes. So if you're interested in working with me, obviously you can DM me. My Instagram is Carrie Lawler Hennessy. And then you also can go to our website, the coaching team that I'm on. It's just fitblissfitness.com. And there's an application you can pick to work with me specifically. Or if not, we have 12 other incredible coaches on our team that are all have the exact same philosophy. So yes, please, or Facebook, reach out to me. You could email me, Carrie@fitblissfitness.com.
Amazing. Okay, well, that's going to be in the show notes page. So if you guys are listening now, that'll be at the top of the page on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the category section. It is alphabetized. You will not just see how to connect, but you're also going to get a full summary of the episode, kind of like what you'd read on the back of a book, as well as a bulleted list of topics we covered and timestamps. So that's just not just for you, but you can share that with teammates, friends, family, and say what you liked about it, why you want them to listen to the episode. Sharing it always means so much to me, as well as the athletes. And it's why the podcast continues to, I believe, grow and get better and better, because we get to have these conversations continuously because of your guys' support. So let the athletes know that you appreciated it. So reach out, connect with us. Don't be shy. And again, just thank you guys for listening and tuning in every week. It is so nice and appreciated. And with all that being said, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.